Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a relaxing break, a little bit of time to stretch your legs and refresh so that we can pick up where we left off and indeed go a little more in depth into the co-construction aspects of the whole One Health strategies. The co-construction approach was already mentioned several times this morning by several of our previous speakers. And the One Health strategy need to be co-constructed, whether it's in Europe or at international level or regional level in other parts of the world. And to help us set the scene about this co-construction and give us the backdrop of this co-creation, I would like to invite Mr. Thierry Lefrançois, who's the Scientific Director and Director of Biological Systems Department at CIRAD. Mr. Lefrançois, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, bon après-midi. Merci pour l'invitation à introduire cette session effectivement sur la co-construction et à vous communiquer quelques éléments de la vision du CIRAD sur PREZODE et sur cet événement. Je le fais au nom d'Elisabeth Claverie de Saint-Martin, la PDG du CIRAD, qui a eu un empêchement majeur. Et effectivement, je souhaite réinsister sur un certain nombre de points qui ont été évoqués en partie ce matin, et en particulier sur l'urgence et notre responsabilité post-crise sanitaire de concevoir la santé de façon intégrée. Et ce, en interaction entre les différents secteurs, cela a été dit, santé humaine, santé animale et environnement. Mais l'idée est maintenant d'aller au-delà des déclarations de principe. Le temps est à l'action de tous, avec un focus sur la prévention des pandémies. Et effectivement, cette session est absolument indispensable pour essayer de comprendre les mécanismes de co-construction. La session précédente a mis en évidence l'obligation de se mobiliser au niveau international quand on s'attaque à la prévention des émergences, et ce, en interaction entre recherche et surveillance, entre d'autres acteurs, comme les acteurs du public et du privé, et entre chercheurs et décideurs. Cette nouvelle session va nous présenter le mécanisme qui a été mis en place dès le début de cette initiative PREZODE, afin d'assurer une vraie co-construction entre des acteurs scientifiques et des décideurs, notamment, mais aussi avec les professionnels, et en mettant au cœur les spécificités régionales, que ce soit en Europe ou dans les 8 autres régions et zones géographiques pour lesquelles ont été déjà organisés des ateliers de co-construction scientifique et opérationnelle. L'expérience nous a montré, dans les réseaux régionaux de santé au Sud, auxquels pas mal d'entre nous participons, que lorsque les stratégies de surveillance et de prévention sont véritablement co-construites de manière participative dès le début, avec l'ensemble des parties prenantes, chercheurs, décideurs, communautés locales, professionnels, elles permettent de mettre en place des systèmes de détection précoce et de réduction des risques qui sont fonctionnels et efficaces. Nous avons des exemples flagrants de ces collaborations efficaces dans des projets européens, comme le projet MOOD sur le data mining et le lien entre recherche et surveillance sur l'identification des signaux d'émergence, ou alors sur des projets coordonnés par des organisations internationales comme l'OIE, comme le projet EBO-Sursis sur la fièvre Ebola. PREZODE cherche véritablement, comme ça a été dit, à capitaliser sur ces projets et sur les initiatives existantes en renforçant le lien et les synergies avec et entre elles. Il est maintenant véritablement important que ces approches participatives soient mises en œuvre au niveau de l'Europe pour le renforcement des activités de recherche sur la prévention et la surveillance à toutes les échelles et afin d'assurer une durabilité des systèmes qui seront mis en place. Et je suis convaincu que l'Europe doit être motrice dans ces approches, à la fois pour le territoire européen et dans le cadre de ces partenariats internationaux et en particulier avec les pays du Sud et l'Afrique. C'est donc bien avec ces approches innovantes et exigeantes que PREZODE construit et mettra en œuvre ces actions opérationnelles avec ses partenaires historiques, mais aussi avec ses nouveaux partenaires. Et cette co-construction est d'ailleurs notamment menée depuis 1 an dans le projet Africam, première tranche du financement qui a été évoqué par l'Agence française de développement pour l'initiative PREZODE sur 5 pays du Sud, Cameroun, Guinée, Sénégal, Madagascar et Cambodge. Nous espérons que les instruments de financement européens de recherche et de développement existants et futurs, et par exemple les initiatives Team Europe qui ont été citées, ou les financements de la DG International Partnership, mais aussi des financements internationaux comme ceux de la Banque mondiale, pourront soutenir l'initiative PREZODE dans ce cadre durable, multi-acteurs, avec, on l'espère, un impact pérenne sur les populations. Et pour finir, plus généralement, il est essentiel que l'Union européenne puisse concrètement soutenir l'initiative PREZODE dans la suite de la déclaration initiale d'Ursula von der Leyen au One Planet Summit en janvier 2021 pour mieux prévenir les futures pandémies dans un cadre One Health, du local au global et avec l'ensemble de nos partenaires. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. Lefrançois. And indeed, the co-construction process rests on joint workshops that have been carried out at European level and in various other parts of the world, as we're going to see in a short while. So those workshops brought together many experts, but also all the key stakeholders, as Mr. Lefrançois just highlighted. And today we have the pleasure of welcoming two of the scientists who contributed to this co-construction process, and they will share with us the synthesis of the European co-construction workshops. So it's my pleasure to welcome with us this afternoon Gwenaëlle Vourcq, who is the research director here at INRAE, and she's also the deputy director of epidemiology of animal and zoonotic diseases unit. And sitting here with me, I have Elisa Bohin, who is the project officer for PREZODE here at INRAE. Good afternoon to both of you. Gwenaëlle, I think I give you the floor.
First, Elisa.
First, Elisa. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, Florence. Yes, with Gwenaëlle Vourcq, we're going to make a presentation of the European workshop. I will present the method and the sequences of these workshops, and Gwenaëlle will present the result of this process. First slide, yes. End of 2021, INRAE organized 3 European workshops to build impact pathways. These workshops are a part of a series of 9 regional workshops, and this series of regional workshops have 3 general objectives: to discuss and share a common vision in which pandemic risk will be minimized, to identify unmet needs for knowledge and surveillance, and to federate a community of researchers and stakeholders. Next slide. INRAE organized 3 European workshops to reach this objective by drawing impact pathways. An impact pathway is a formal tool used to identify the several elements we target to decrease zoonotic risk emergence and the sequences of transformation needed to achieve them. We ask the participants, according to them, what are the targets to reach in several fields, for example, agriculture, network surveillance, or wildlife, and what are the research gaps, the knowledge needs, and the operational needs required. And during the first workshop in July 2021, we gathered 125 scientists from 19 countries and 60 research institutes. We invited stakeholders for the second workshop last October, representative of ministries, representative of the European Commission, European agencies, international organizations, professional organizations, representative of the private sector, think tank, and NGOs. And finally, during the last workshop in December 2021, we gathered scientists and stakeholders. The first and the second workshops aims to identify the targets. We highlighted 5 targets in several fields: livestock, surveillance network, wildlife, One Health public policy, and the remote footprint of Europe. And during the first and the second workshops, the participants have identified the research gaps and the knowledge needs and operational needs to reach these 5 targets. And during the last workshop, we presented the result of the previous workshops and the impact pathway. and we ask the participants to comment, to add new elements, and to discuss about some controversial issues or unclear formulation. Yes, and next slide, please. Yes. To summarize, these European workshops in which impact pathways were based on aim to gather to co-construct the initiative with 24 countries, more than 300 participants, and 60 research institutes for the 3 sessions. You can see the distribution of the category of stakeholders. Almost half of them come from the academic field. A third were representative of government. Less than a quarter come from private sector. I let the floor to Gwenaëlle Vourge to explain and present the results and the detail of impact pathways.
Thank you, Elisa. To start, I want to say that this is the first time that we are presenting the outcome of the workshop. So we've done a work to wrap up the main messages, and we still have, it's an ongoing work, we still have to work with the participant to on the synthesis. So it's take it as an ongoing work, and you have the prime time on that. And so I'm talking about on the behalf of all the participants and the facilitators, who I really want to thank for all their really amazing input. So as Elisa said, we identified 5 targets on sustainable livestock farming, with the idea that reaching the sustainability with low environmental impact and low risk of zoonotic disease emergence. A second one, targeting more on wildlife towards a social agro-ecosystem with high biodiversity, especially wildlife, and low risk of zoonotic disease emergence. And then one targeting surveillance with efficient detection and surveillance network for zoonoses. And the last 2 that target more public policy, one on the integrated One Health public policy, and the last one on the reduction of the footprint of Europe's zoonotic risk. So as you see, we identify this target, and you will see that some items are recurrent or come several times, of course, because as everyone has said this morning, we have to link things together, but also we have to work and identify action. So we have to manage to identify main points and targets. So now I will review this target and explain you how with the participant and facilitator, which research and knowledge need we identify and operational needs. So if we can go next slide. So for the first 2 targets, we gather them together because in fact there are a number of points that are linked together. And to precise more this target, we underline that we want to reach a resilient livestock-wildlife interface in the frame of European policy that are adapted to regional specificity as well as harmonized, as you will see. And also something that is in fact could be adapted to any target is the idea to have a comprehensive understanding of the risk by society. Regarding the livestock part, the sub-targets were indicating on the sustainable agricultural land management. Of course, together with food security and safety and fair farmers' income and animal welfare. Regarding biodiversity, that was underlined this following sub-target, sustainable wildlife management. There are also a point on the reduction of alien species and the reduction of introduction of animal products and transition towards greener cities. Next slide, please. So to reach these targets, we identify several points that are works in synergy for both of these targets. One of the first points was really underlying the need to understand the dynamic of zoonotic risk with the trends towards more outdoor livestock farming and how the risk was evolved also with the coexistence of the different types of farming. So a point on the evolution of the livestock-wildlife human interface, Also, there was quite a lot of discussion on the role of microbiota to modulate pathogen transmission, or that it's a proxy for the identification of a disruption done by pathogen. It leads also to a scientific question regarding dynamic or multi-host adaptation for pathogen and systematic approaches. Regarding the second point, we underlined the need to better understand the evolution of zoonotic risk dynamic associated with change in biodiversity. There has been quite a few work done with the years on this topic, but really to entangle it with other major drivers such as climate change, urbanization, deforestation, land changes, etc. And so to be able to, in fact, understand the mechanism behind that and identify new practice that could mitigate the risk. And the last point that we underlined here was to characterize the transmission loops from zoonosis to human and back animal to human and back to animals, and the loop of transmission that can occur. So as for operational needs, in each slide, what I will present, sometimes they are really in link with the other point of research, but it's not necessary. We haven't done exactly the whole path yet. So it's that the global operational needs that were identified for this topic was to adapt public policy subsidies accounting for this change in farming. And also develop integrated or inclusive animal health regulation in the context of this evolution of farming, especially the development of farmers' animal health service. And the last point was really to work on the restoration of biodiversity across scale while increasing our capacity to reduce the risk of transmission, especially with the reduction of deforestation, introduction of predators, and identify really critical points for risk prevention. Always in the frame of mitigating the conflicts, the possible conflicts at the interface of wildlife, livestock, and human. So if we continue on the next slide, then there was just a few points we wanted to underline that are more specific to each of the targets, especially regarding livestock. There was also, as this has been underlined in the morning, quite a few discussion on AMR, as it is really important and can have an important impact on the burden of zoonosis from livestock. And also risk identified that would be associated with alternative species breeding, such as insect and snail, and how this would impact the zoonotic risk. So for the operational need for that was the strengthening the One Health European policy of AMR reduction. We talked about that a bit this morning. And also plan to increase the use of other protein, plant protein or alternative protein, and food sovereignty, together with increasing genetic or maintaining the capacity to increase genetic diversity for species that are bred, such as livestock species. Regarding the wildlife target, we underline the point of studying the impact of biodiversity conservation strategy on zoonotic risk, and especially assessing the resilience of ecological community to pathogen emergence, and looking at the scenario between really putting lands for conservation or sharing and increasing biodiversity at all levels. This raises research and knowledge question. And also better assessing and quantifying the role of both legal and illegal wildlife trade. So this leads to operational need on working on the value of biodiversity, to put a value on the ecosystem services that can be used in some frame, and also to better regulate and control wildlife trade and harmonize this policy at the European level. So now if we turn to target 3, I think that's what all what we would like to reach is efficient detection and surveillance network. That means really integrated and also efficient across scale from local to global. So taking at the same time the specificity of the region, but has a global also scale. So the system that would be also relevant for unexpected pathogen, and which is quite important, that ensure ethical practice throughout the process. So for this target, we identify the following research needs. Yes, thank you. So the first one was to develop efficient tools for diagnosis and early detection, especially targeted on in situ tools that are non-invasive, that also take into account the citizen-based science and citizen-based data sampling that can be of great use in some identified condition. And also better develop the environmental basis of, in fact, the One Health strategy by integrating proxy really of biodiversity right into the surveillance approaches. The second point was developing the FAIR, which is a findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, as well as ethical data management throughout the surveillance process. And in fact, that raised question in really to how put that into practice and how to manage to have that through the process. And the third part was toward the deployment, coordination, and analysis of network at the European level to maximize alerts. That is to take into account and manage to characterize and take into account the social ecological context to adapt the surveillance, increase our modeling capacity to integrate the scales, and increase the predictive performance of model. So that led to operational needs towards adapting public policy to outcome of innovation tools, developing One Health surveillance across sectoral from local to global with important actor engagement, the provision of a framework for fair data strategy, and ensuring durability of surveillance policy that is in a way to be able to promote the return on investment of approach of surveillance, which in fact where we need to show the interest of surveillance that is to lead to a very low emergence of zoonosis. And there was also discussion between the need of maintaining existing networks, which is really important in relation to create totally new networks. So for the last two targets, which are more on public policy, and if you can change the slide, please. Integrated One Health public policy and reducing footprint, that's in the frame of economical stability and international cooperation. So the idea is, as a sub-target, is to foster the co-design of public policy. And regarding the footprint is really to manage to go towards the lower impact of European consumption, production, and tourism in other countries, and to promote sustainable diet. So as for the first two targets, we identify research knowledge and needs and operation needs that were common to the target 4 and 5. If you can change the slide. And that was designing efficient public policy in the frame of the One Health concept. I think we talked quite a lot about this because we all have really the motivation, the incentive, and the will to do that, but it's not that easy. So it's also questions some research and knowledge gap or question, especially the idea to go that can help to go towards quantitative objective on One Health, and again the assessment of externalities. The second point is the design of innovative science citizen policy interface to be able to integrate experience-based knowledge, increase scientist awareness, and also develop a really evidence-based approach for public policy, and integrate the full integration of scientists in the design of international protocol. For operational needs, we identify the need to link sectoral policy with the risk of zoonotic diseases. So again, with the importance of measuring the externality, and also the idea to put in place soft law and label concerning zoonotic disease to be able to foster this public policy. And the last operational need that we underline here is the development of framework actor for actor engagement, especially on education and citizen participation framework. And so for the last slide on this, showing on the targets, we wanted to underline a few points for this specific target of the reduction of footprint that is in the frame of what Serge Morin talked about this morning with the eclipse, how the public policy of Europe contribute to the risk of in the third country, or could mitigate the risk. So, so research and knowledge needs regarding this target were identified are really because we really need first to be able to characterize the footprint. So identify the activity, understand the mechanism leading to this remote impact, and quantify the impact. And then develop integrated strategy to reduce the footprint with evaluation and co-design of response strategy. And then to strengthen our understanding of benefit from international cooperation regarding the prevention of zoonotic disease. So this led to funding transition towards more sustainability, supporting international surveillance strategy, and promoting international cooperation for prevention. So to conclude, if you want to the next step. So I said this is really an ongoing process. So all this work will be continue to be analyzed and will feed the research and operational agenda of PREZODE. And as the whole process, it is an iterative process. So within the life of the initiative, there will be, of course, the objective, the target will be questioned again and adapt as we go. And so I thank again all the participants and the facilitator for the input, and we will be very happy to have your feedback on this that you can put on your comment or answer question. Thank you very much.
Thank you both, and thanks for being so clear and precise in your feedback on this, on these important European workshops. Indeed, these co-creation workshops have brought together many experts and stakeholders, and we have together today with us some of the experts who did take part in the co-construction workshops. And I'd like to invite them to share their testimonies with us. So we have three guests joining us. We have Christian Walzer. Christian is the Executive Director of Health, Wildlife and the Conservation Society. Kees van der Ark, who is a postdoctorate researcher at the National Institute for Public Health and Environment in the Netherlands. And we have Milen Georgiev, who is the scientific officer in knowledge, innovation and partnership management at the European Food Safety Agency, EFSA. Good afternoon to all three of you. My first question will be, what changes would be, in your view, the most transformative in order to prevent zoonoses emergencies or emergence, the emergence of zoonoses, to make it clearer? So maybe I will start with you, Christian.
Yeah, thanks very much, and good morning from the Bronx here on the east coast of the United States to everyone. So, obviously, coming from the side where I come from the Wildlife Conservation Society, one thing that's important to note that we have to, when we talk about zoonosis, is what are we really concerned of? There are known zoonoses, of course, we know a lot about those, but what we're really, really concerned about are the novel emerging pathogens we know nothing about. And actually, it's really important to understand that we spent billions and hundreds of billions of dollars on vaccine relief and response, but the pandemic is still ongoing. And the painful lesson there is that containing a pandemic, once it's started, is really difficult, really expensive, and it's getting worse because we're so interconnected. So I think there are 5 key areas that we need to address to really stop pandemics at source. And that is shutting down and strictly regulating wildlife trade and markets, especially with live wildlife. I mean, this is crazy. These are gain-of-function experiments going on in the middle of urban centers where millions of people live, and we think that's okay. We got to improve human and livestock healthcare in the tropical regions, of course, primarily. We need to reduce or stop deforestation. That is absolutely clear, and there's no reason that the EU would have import products with deforestation. We need to strengthen biosecurity in animal husbandry. That's especially when we think about avian influenza, of course, and we need to enhance the surveillance for new viruses. And it's not only determining or describing new viruses, we need to think about what we do with that information when we find new viruses. So prevention and preparedness both start with P and are super confused by most administrations and agencies. We really need to understand that prevention means prevention at source before there's been a spread. So that would be my most important change that needs to happen. And just let me add, that is also an excellent investment. It's an excellent return of investment. It's like 1 to 10, 1 to 20, what you're going to invest in. So that would be my statement on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kees, in your view?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. And first of all, I really enjoyed the co-construction process before. That's also quite important, of course. I agree mostly what was said before already. But also adding to that is that the factor time is quite important. So upon detection of whatever pathogen in humans or animals, it's very important to share the data very quickly and timely. And that's also really important in order to act upon it, because if you don't know what's happening on the other side of the world, it's very difficult to act upon it. And also from the human side, it's very important to just limit human and animal contact when it's not needed or required. And especially in a country as the Netherlands, where we're living with a lot of animals, both livestock, but also wildlife, on a very confined space, it's difficult to limit those kind of contacts. And there's, of course, also the vectors that are important to consider. So mosquitoes in urban areas, also rats and mice, that need to be included in surveillance efforts as well. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Milen, from the point of view of EFSA, what is needed to prevent more zoonosis emergence?
I concur. Good afternoon. I concur with the message that we need to focus on timely identification, prevention, control of diseases with zoonotic characters. and some of those that have epidemic or even pandemic characteristics. We also need to explore the extent to which the current One Health approach and framework at the EU, but also globally, can efficiently, timely identify, prevent, and control public and animal health threats and related risk of scaling this up to wider epidemics and pandemics. We also all, scientists and generalists, we all need to embrace the various opportunities to advocate and encourage extended collaboration between disciplines, between countries, and to build even more trust in science. In this sense, I could just refer to the coming conference, One Health, Environment, Society, in June 2022, where my organization, EFSA, is organizing in Brussels, but also online, with an opportunity for extended discussion on infectious diseases, but also One Health, sustainability, but also methodology, data collection, all practical aspects that we can utilize.
Thank you. I have another question for all three of you, actually. The role of science. Now, how do you see the role of science in your particular field in the context of prevention of zoonosis emergence? And maybe this time I will start with Kees.
Yeah, I think I still can continue a little bit on what was said previously by Christian, is that it is important to understand what makes a pathogen cause a pandemic. Indeed, the open lab experiment, the field experiments with wet markets, those are not the places where we should do those experiments, but we should know what drives evolutionary processes to make pathogens cause a pandemic. And so we are already quite capable of screening by sequencing, for example, so really new techniques, next generation sequencing. And I think we should elaborate a bit more on that and invest in new techniques that can quickly determine the pathogenicity of a new pathogen. And that could also be supported by, but this is really the holy grail of pandemic prevention, is being able to predict where the next pandemic will start. So pinpointing the risk areas. And I think there's still a lot of work to do there in understanding what actually drives the evolution of pathogens to cause a pandemic.
Thank you. Christian, what about the role of science?
Yeah, the role of science. First of all, I have to really agree. It's all our responsibility to make sure that decisions and policies are developed on solid evidence and not on opinions and beliefs and things like that. So I agree with that. And then building a bit on what Kees was just saying, I absolutely agree on that. The pathogen side is one part, and I think we've been a bit remiss, and my own organization spent, 2 decades or something looking for pathogens, and I was quite happy always when we found a new pathogen, and how cool was that? But I think what we need to do is we need to keep doing that, but we also need to shift, in a real transdisciplinary, transsectoral One Health approach to really looking at the practices that drive these emergencies. So there's the mechanistic part, which Kees was saying, which is really interesting, we need to understand, but there are some practices, the human side of things. What are people doing and doing increasingly that drive this emergence? And obviously we know some of those related to markets or deforestation and so on, but I think we need to really necessarily focus on that. And for that, we're going to need transsectoral funding streams as well, because at the moment our funding streams are so siloed that it's really difficult to put together projects where we can work together with our colleagues from social sciences, from economics, and so on to look at these practices. So I look forward to that changing shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Millen, would you like to add something on that particular angle?
Definitely, and first of all, to support the direction for connecting science and interdisciplinary approach. And I think it's a very good question, because even with science, the role of different scientific organizations, institutions differs. Bringing them together brings added value. For example, in my authority, EFSA, our role is to support policymakers on their decision-making, always making the use of latest scientific developments coming from other relevant institutions, university, research centers. And this is what we call regulatory science. When it comes to the prevention of zoonosis emergence, I think it's clear that the important is to look at the interface between animals and humans and to understand the factors that play a role in disease emergence and look for practicality of what could be used. Data collection and data sharing between all involved stakeholders and players it's critical factor for success. For example, we took some steps in that direction. EFSA considers primordial to develop a data model for collecting animal disease data that is in standardized format across the European Union. A Sigma project 3 years ago was developed, and my colleagues worked together with member states to reduce the manual input, to add more automation, to offer opportunity for own draft national reports. And the outcome is a result of participatory and a collaborative procedure with other partners. Another example is a VectorNet project that is a collaboration between ECDC and EFSA, which somehow co-construct the previous project ViborNet, where we have medical entomologists and public health professionals, are now extended to bring together veterinary entomologists and veterinarians working in the field, and to help prepare for and understand better vector-borne diseases in Europe and surrounding Mediterranean bases. And this is an example of sharing knowledge, which we believe that sharing of data knowledge is a key element to ensure One Health approach. Also, the role of science is in the frame of framing the right questions, the need to be answered, and developing the methodologies and tools that allow rapid assessment, for example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to remind you all that you can still continue sending questions for either our three speakers here or for the two colleagues who reported on the co-construction process. And I actually have a question already for Gwenaël Vurch at this stage. Gwenaël, yes, you're back on screen. So the question is, the drivers of zoonotic disease emergence also contribute to other risks, such as AMR or food safety. How does PREZODE plan to build an integrated response to these drivers that don't treat zoonoses as standalones?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that this idea was really pointed out throughout the workshop and from the beginning, as when we built the targets, right from the beginning, we formulated the target with the target to reach low risk of zoonotic together with food safety and security. And as has been underlined throughout the day, you cannot isolate just the zoonotic without the rest. So I think really because we link research to operational needs, I think this is also a point that where we are going to see really this cross and this need to not to isolate the emergence by its own. Of course, some really specific research question on some mechanism or things like this, you need to be able to isolate some process to be able to have a scientific approach to understand really this process, but then you need to put it in the context, and that's That will be bring by also the way we address this research question, especially one way is to put forward systemic approach and the long-term dynamics, where then you integrate all the other components within the study and not just separate the different items.
Thank you. Would any of our three other speakers like to add anything on this, maybe about the systemic approach or in your own experience? Christian, yes?
Yeah, so I think one of the, just sort of as a sort of a simple way to look at it, you know, there's the old mantra, there is no glory in prevention. This is one most of us grew up, I can see the age of us on here where most of us heard that, and that has just got to change. And I think this is what PREZODE can really contribute to. There is a lot of glory in prevention. And so I think this is these co-creation process has highlighted where we can work on this. And so my main point is we need to change that attitude and that mantra.
Thank you. So if you do not have anything else to add on this particular aspect of things, I think I will come back to all three of you, gentlemen, and ask you in a couple of sentences, maybe what your main conclusion, what your main takeaway is in terms of the co-construction process, but also PREZODE in general, and what do you think PREZODE will bring in terms of added value to your field, whether now or in the future, midterm, long term. So the value added of PREZODE and your main takeaway in a couple of sentences. Started maybe with Milan this time.
Yes, thank you. In my view, that a critical point is data knowledge sharing to ensure One Health, if I could summarize in one sentence. But the engagement for One Health and structural support and systemic approach and co-development of initiatives with stakeholders, excelling in methodologies and early involvement of multidimensional expertise, that is something that PREZODE offers to bring to the table. Of course, it needs a coordination to be sure that we answer the right questions in the right way and we are practical, and to have a clear, well-defined mandate in different tasks.
Thank you. Kees?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think PREZODE is developing or could develop into a really important network in which scientific methods can be shared, but also data can be shared in real time. And maybe also integrating the different One Health aspect of environmental health, animal health, and human health as well. And I think, and I really hope that's also really important to consider PREZODE not as a project as such, but as a long-term investment. And I think that's something that's really important for these kind of initiatives in general, that there should not be a defined end date to it, but it should be for the long term preferably.
Thank you. Christian?
Yes, I'm agreeing with all my colleagues previously. There's the importance of a network, also the importance of having a European-driven network. I think that's important in the general concept. And then PREZODE, of course, has a really, really central role in raising funds and streamlining funding opportunities across sectors. So I look forward to continuing long-term work with PREZODE to enable these big funding streams and mobilize these resources. Thank you very much.
Right, and a quick question before we actually close, and you can tell me, you can raise your hand and tell me which one of you is particularly inspired by that question. But what do you see as really crucial in the co-construction process in general? You know, what would make a difference, if anything, in your view? Kees, yes?
Yeah, I think what I really like during the past months in which I've been involved is the bottom-up approach, in which everyone can have its say And I think that's also instrumental for the further development of PREZODE. And in this way, I also heard approaches and sides of the prevention story that I didn't think of before myself. So I think that was really instrumental in the co-construction process.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I mean, what's essential, and maybe how PREZODE can contribute in an efficient manner to transformation. So, slightly broadening the question. Yes, Christian.
So I think moving forwards, what we really need is sort of radical transparency and enhanced communication. I think the task is huge. I think we always underestimate how huge the task is and the mandate is now. So moving forwards, a radical transparency and enhanced communication is really going to help get us off the ground and grow. Thank you.
Milan, would you like to add anything?
Only to say, looking for a continuation.
That's a good concluding word. Gwenaëlle, maybe I'll leave the last word with you.
Well, thank you for all this discussion, and we'll take all this interesting, important remark, and we'll make sure that the co-construction process will continue throughout the life of PREZODE and with good transparency and communication. I think it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you to all four of you. So indeed, as I mentioned earlier on, co-construction is a process that also was used in other parts of the world. And we are very privileged to have with us today representatives of the PREZODE co-construction workshops in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in the South America, Caribbean region, who will share with us their recommendations for actual cooperation actions to come. So I would like to welcome for Africa Ms. Priska Mugabe, who's Associate Professor at the Department of Animal Science at the University of Zimbabwe. Ms. Mugabe, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Would you like to share with us the outcome of your co-construction and your recommendation for future actions?
Thank you very much. I'll do that through a couple of slides.
Please do.
The first part of my presentation will be to give you an introductory backdrop to the synthesis on the synthesis of the PREZODE co-construction workshops at the global level, and then I will also present some perspective from the Africa regional co-construction process. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yes, so I will be presenting on Africa, and I also have, sorry, to give the introduction and then the perspectives on Africa, and then I will have colleagues to represent on Southeast Asia and the Pacific, and also on Latin America and the Caribbean. Next slide, please. So in terms of methodology, the PREZODE co-construction process was basically done in 3 phases of regional workshops that took place in the year 2021. The first workshop was in June 2021, and the aim of this workshop was to collectively define a common vision to tackle zoonotic risks, and also to discuss the obstacles that would need to be overcome. The second workshop in September 2021 then focused on the need for changes, like a need identification, and also the actors that would be involved in these changes. Finally, in November 2021, the co-construction workshop was on how to promote these identified changes, and also to look at the activities that would be associated with these changes. Next slide, please. So just a look at the representation of the contributors of the co-construction process. We see that we had representation from 7 regions around the world. And I'll quickly go through these regions. The first one was North Africa, the Mediterranean and Middle East region, and then West Africa, Central Africa, the Austral and Eastern Africa, Indian Ocean, Southeast Asia, East Asia and the Pacific, and finally, Latin America and the Caribbean. So across these regions, you had representation of 99 total number of countries that took part in this co-construction process, and 1,118 total number of contributors across these regions. Next slide. So just to look at the distribution of the contributors in terms of sectoral distribution, just at a glance, you can appreciate that there was a diverse representation of sectors in this process, but the academic sector represented almost half of the contributors to the process, followed by representatives from government sectors who represented about 25% of the contributors. Also important were contributions from the operational sector. Here we are looking at examples like the non-governmental organizations, also followed by research institutes across the globe, looking also at like your international research organizations. The private sector was also relatively well represented at 2.8%. And we had a final sector which was not identified, but quite representative at about 3.7%, here labeled as the unknown. Next slide, please. So in terms of the statistics of what has been happening in this process, like we said before, we are looking at representation from 7 regions across the world, 99 countries, and 1,118 contributors. You have over 6,000 ideas that were exchanged during the co-construction process. And also in this process, you had identification of 150 specific obstacles categories that were identified, and also more specifically, 23 main obstacles were synthesized from this. And this led to the identification of 585 impact pathways that were designed in this co-construction process. And up to date, we have 100 signed members to the PREZODE initiative. And actually, we are still counting. Next slide, please. We had in the morning presentation also the importance of synergies, because we are not coming from nowhere. Things have been happening already. And so in the process, other initiatives with synergies with PREZODE were also identified. And the map that we present here is actually non-exhaustive, but it gives us a good indication, whereby 144 international and regional initiatives were mentioned during the workshops. And if you look at the map across the regions, the dark intensity of the colorations there from the regions also indicates the intensity of mention or the intensity of occurrence of other synergies. For instance, if you look at the northeastern part of Latin America, quite intensive there, and also the central part of Africa, Southern Africa, West Africa, across the entire 7 regions. You have very good representation. And also we should note that at the very minimum, at least one other initiative would have been identified at these workshops. Next slide, please. So the global visions or targets for all the regions combined that have been synthesized so that in 30 years' time, PREZODE would have contributed to reduce the risk of zoonotic diseases emergence by these 7 targets, namely, number 1, building up sustainable zoonotic risks prevention frameworks with a better understanding and management of risks. Secondly, empowering local communities and national stakeholders in the reduction and early detection of emerging risks. Number 3, building up resilient social ecosystems while reducing pressure on biodiversity and environmental health to contain zoonotic risks and ensure food security from wildlife and domestic animal production. We have the 4th cross-cutting target here of ensuring ethical practices considering inequalities and development needs of the countries and sharing of results and recommendation. Target number 5 is on improving early detection and surveillance networks from the local scale to the global scale. Number 6, strengthening collaboration and trust between sectors across levels for different types of partners from the local scale to the global scale. And finally, number 7, ensuring political engagement and evidence-based policy changes. Next slide, please. So we've mentioned before that there were 23 main obstacle categories that were identified and synthesized in this co-construction process. And in this diagram, we have mention of those 23. And I'll just pick out on a few examples just to give you an idea of the issues, of the obstacles that would need to be tackled to reach our targets. Issues like political issues, commitment to One Health approaches, environmental changes, issues of corruption, lack of risk understanding. We've already had, even in the presentation here, the issue of data sharing, lack of coordination, education training issues, capacity and logistic issues, communities inclusion, lack of local communities options, lack of interdisciplinarity, intersectorial collaboration, empowering local communities, and so on, among these 23 obstacles. Next slide, please. So in the next 2 slides, I will go through 2 examples of impact pathways that were synthesized in the co-construction process. Actually, these are 2 examples out of 585 identified impact pathways across the regions. So for the first one, at this scale of research and operational need, we are looking at how to ensure long-term community engagement for sustainable prevention of zoonotic disease emergence. This would then be directly related to the intermediate transformation need, whereby local actors become aware of their importance in a sustainable zoonotic disease prevention system. And also decision makers understand and take into account the constraints and needs of local communities. All this then is important for bringing up about the targets or the global vision of risk management, empowerment, resilient ecosystems, ethical practices, and political engagement. Next slide, please. So for the second example of an impact pathway for all the regions combined is that at the research and operational needs level, we are looking at how to engage the actors from all sectors in co-developing zoonotic risk reduction and early detection solution. Because this is important for bringing about the intermediate transformation whereby all actors understand the benefits of collaboration to reduce emergence risk. Public policies are articulated between local, national, and international levels, as well as between existing networks. Research activities on zoonosis emergence are developed in a multidisciplinary way and have a common objective. And finally, intersectorality and One Health approach are integrated in university and training curricula. And as with the other example, all this then would lead to the target or global vision of risk management, empowerment, resilient social ecosystems, intersectoral collaborations, and political engagement. Thank you. Next slide. So with that backdrop of the process, we now move to looking at examples of the co-construction process as it occurred for the Africa region, whereby 5 regional co-construction workshops took place in Africa in 2021. Here are the countries represented by our contributors for the 5 African regions during the workshops. And as you can see in the middle of the map there, showing the map of Africa and the associated neighboring regions, we had 65, a total number of countries for these regions actually took part in the Africa co-construction process. And 664 contributors for these regions actually participated. And again, we see we see differential representation across the region, but overall, we have very good representation from the southern part of the continent, the eastern part, Central Africa, West Africa, the Northern African sub-region. Thank you very much. Next slide. So as for 2 examples, I'll also give 2 examples of an impact pathway that stemmed from Africa, whereby we had a total of 358 impact pathways that were identified in this process. But here we'll look at 2. The first one is that at the research and operational needs level, we need to understand and describe the mechanism of emergence at the human-animal environment interface. And this is important because earlier on, somebody talked about the importance of controlling its source. And also this would then lead to the intermediate transformation needs whereby research capacity is sufficient and research provides scientific evidence on the emergence of zoonotic diseases in relation to wildlife domestic contacts and spillover risks. And again, as in other examples that I gave before, this is important in terms of attaining the global targets or the global vision of risk management, empowerment, resilient ecosystem, and so on. Next slide, please.
Ms. Mugabe, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up because I would like to keep some time for our other presenters as well and make sure we have a balanced speaking time. So if you could just quickly wrap up.
I actually have just one more slide to go. Thank you. So the second example is that in terms of an impact pathway from Africa, is to understand and describe the mechanism of emergence at, wasn't this the first one? how to sustainably engage decision makers in the prevention of zoonotic risk management. And the intermediate transformation needs of importance are a sub-regional summit on the issues of zoonotic risk emergence, improves the flow of information and puts the issue on the agenda. Citizens trust decision makers. Public aid is committed to prevention of zoonotic emergence, and decision makers of different sectors have a common vision and a long-term perspective, again, leading to those 5 targets at the global level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are going to continue our trip around the world. We went south to Africa. We're now going to go east to Southeast Asia and Pacific. And for that, I would like to welcome Hung Nguyen, who is the co-leader of Animal and Human Health Program and International Livestock Research Institute. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I'm actually very happy to take a few minutes to show you what are the main outcome of the series of the co-construction workshop from Southeast Asia, East Asia, and the Pacific. May I have the next slide, please, where we can see the map. Okay, yes, as you said, I bring you to the east. And then actually, so we have a series of workshops with the participation of more than 300 people from over 30 countries. You can see here that for future, we would like to engage more with China, Japan, Korea, etc. But here you already have a pretty nice representation of country in Southeast Asia, East Asia, and the Pacific. And you can have interest also from people from Europe, some Africa, and North America. I just want to say that, when we talked about One Health, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and the Pacific is one of the most relevant regions to implement the concept of One Health, but also to have PREZODE operating there. Because we for the last decades, many emerging infectious diseases started in our region. That's why One Health is important, and it's very important to bring more projects, more partners to work to prevent the next pandemics from the region and globally. And for that, next one, please. Here, because of the time, we would like to show only 2 examples reflecting 2 impact pathways identified from the workshop. And you can see here, we had about 140 impact pathway identified. And I would say that one of the most important things we emphasize from the workshop is really the need to have a sustainable framework for prevention of zoonotic risk in this region. Why? Because that is a very populated region with a lot of food security, food production activities to feed the population. And as I said before, that is the hotspot, a place to have emergence of infectious disease. That's why it's very important to have this framework, taking into account the insurance of food security and socioeconomic issue when implementing One Health. So to make it happen, what do we need to do? And here's a few ideas that came from the workshop. For example, here we see that, for example, researchers and decision makers need to understand the community before proposing the solution, which seemed to be very logic and normal, but it is actually still a need to generate a lot of understanding and evidence from that side. The second point, we said that, One Health, we talked a lot about that from the high level conference, like today, for example, but we see that we need more education on understanding of One Health for the policymakers, because, they are responsible to allocate the resource to implement this approach. And we need not to train them, but educate them more so that they understand the approach. And once they understand One Health, they can be more supportive to this approach and also committed to the One Health implementation. Also, the 2 last point in this impact pathway, you can see also that we need to bring more understanding of ecosystem and environmental protection and the interest of One Health in this region because of extensive agricultural production and also the growth of economy and the population. So a lot of things happening from the environmental protection side, a lot of degradation of forestry, ecosystem deforestation, and that need to be really bring into this approach in addition to zoonotic disease, AMR, and food safety, and so on. Next slide, please. And of course, all these things contribute to the target we identify from the beginning. The second highlight, and that is the last one from the region, I want to present is about clarifying the added value of the integrated approach to health. And One Health is actually part of this group of approach. We have also eco-health to zoonotic risk prevention. Why we have to do that? Because I said before that resource is always scarce, and to convince people to apply One Health or integrated approach to health for zoonotic risk prevention, we need to justify the value of money. And you see, I think that we talk a lot about One Health. We have very few case studies to show how useful and how valuable this One Health approach to policymakers and to the community. That's why we need to develop that, to mobilize fund, more funding, more resource for applying One Health, and also developing kind of evaluation methods to evaluate the One Health project and integrated health project. And finally, if we have this framework I talked before, and we have the evaluation framework, we have some developed by different networks, but that need to be refined to adapt to the specific region. And with that, we hope that decision maker will use the result of the evaluation to define and invest in the activities to prevent the next pandemics. And hopefully all these things contribute to achieve the target you can see on the right-hand side. So thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nguyen. So we're going to continue our trip around the world, and we're going to continue going east, across the Pacific, and come back to the South America and Caribbean area. And it's a pleasure to welcome with us Gerardo Susan, who's the principal investigator of Laboratory of Disease and Health Ecology at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. Good afternoon. Well, good morning for you, I suppose.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon over there. Thank you for the presentation, and hello everybody. I'm going to present the efforts done in Latin America and the Caribbean. Next slide, please. First, I want to show that more than 300 people in a multidisciplinary approach and from different sectors contributed actively in the workshops with the great ideas representing 65 countries. And after discussions, next slides, please, next slide. We identified some the impact pathways, and first one on research and operational needs. We identified that how to empower local community researchers and promote a bottom-up approach in the prevention of zoonotic risk emergence while ensuring ethical practices in terms of result and recommendation sharing. This leads us to transformation needs, and we identify that policymakers, local community and researchers are training in the field. Surveillance activities and local actions are co-developed by local communities, and solutions developed by local communities are integrated in their practices, ensuring their adoption. That leads us to the targets and the global versions, including risk management, empowerment, resilient social ecosystems, ethical practice, surveillance networks, and political engagements. The other impact pathway, next slide, please, that we identified is in research and operational needs is understanding the mechanisms and barriers for intersectoral collaborations from local to central levels, leading us to a transformation needs that a proportion of the funding is dedicated to planning interdisciplinary research programs and projects. Social sciences are included in the projects, and policymakers are aware of the importance to consider intersectorial approaches. This leads us to a target that in empowerment, in ethical practices, intersectoral collaborations, and political engagements. So basically, we wanted to show what we feel in different countries, what we identify the critical points, and well, we want to thank everybody. Next slide, please. Thank you for attention, and thank you for all previous speakers.
Thank you very much. That was definitely very brief and concise. So the way we'll like it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to come back to you with a more general question, actually, about your experience in these co-construction projects. What, in your view, is the added value of co-construction? And particularly, how does it help you apprehend emergence risk prevention in your respective regions? And maybe I'll start with Ms. Mugabe.
Muted. I think the importance of co-construction, especially if we look at those communities that we've been making reference to, the issue of ownership, the issue of having their buy-in, the issue of even incorporating all facets from social, cultural, heritage issues, their practices, their aspirations, so that then they don't see foreign-looking veterinarians or health officers running around in motorbikes or 4x4 vehicles, and they don't really relate to it. So where you have buy-in, you are then more guaranteed of success and the sustainability that we've been talking about since morning. Thank you.
Mr. Nguyen.
Yes, I think that from my perspective, it's not yet very much on the community side, like my colleague Priska just mentioned. What I saw as the value of this co-construction workshop under PREZODE is, in fact, in particular from East Africa and Southeast Asia, where I have been involved more, is in fact, we have many One Health type projects here and there. And at some point, we are working in a competitive spirit to get funding and doing things and deliver the project. What was missing a bit is kind of, the platform looking like PREZODE to convene all these people practicing One Health together. And we were very happy to see many participants from, international organization, national research institute, university, but also from government people and some NGO to sit together, of course, virtually for this series of workshop to share and to map what is going on from the regional level. And for me, this co-construction could mobilize the participation and mobilize the collective spirit. And hopefully this week's identification of the problem we presented, we will be able to move it forward in the long term to solve certain problems in specific region. Over to you.
Thank you. And was the spirit the same, the feeling the same in the South American and Caribbean region?
Yes, I agree with both of the previous thoughts. It's in Latin America, I guess, we are co-construction with the efforts together with the PREZODE, and it's giving us some ideas to how to collaborate from different sectors, and it's enhancing the isolated silos. Everybody, as mentioned before, is working on One Health, but they are on their own. They are not working in an intersectorial way. They are not working with a multidisciplinary way, even though we need the interdisciplinary way to work. And this is enhancing completely social disciplines, mathematical disciplines, biological disciplines, molecular people working on. So together we are enhancing, we are getting a nice networks to really work on the idea to work together to really prevent zoonotic diseases in an integrated way. But working also together with the people in the way of education, in the way of collaboration, in the way of being as an equal partners working together. That's the feeling that we are creating with the PREZODE co-constructed networks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So that leads me to my next question, which is really a follow-up of this particular point. I mean, you've all been working on One Health actions in your respective areas for a while, for a long time. Do you think that, I was going to ask if you thought the work you had been doing until now is efficient, and that's not the right way of putting it, because of course it was efficient. But do you think that PREZODE can bring another dimension, and that PREZODE can help, for instance, in the challenges linked to implementation, to the implementation of the projects you had been working on until now? Maybe starting with Mr. Nguyen?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question to follow. Actually, no, I have to say that, of course, we have been in this area for long. I would say that 1 decade or even more, depending on experience of each person, and many projects have been done. We need to be honest. Also, some project was very well implemented. Some others, not. So we need to honest in this thing. But I think that is part of our life to deal with on this research question and context. So I think that from the national level, each country has the strategy and working with their own resource, but also mobilize the external partnership to help. And they need to continue doing that. I see the added value of PREZODE until now. Of course, and this is inception phase, is starting slowly, but I see already the value that it looks like that there is a strategy to really mobilize a quite high level commitment from the country and institution. Yesterday, I checked quickly with my PREZODE colleague in France. I saw, for example, my own country, Vietnam, is one of the member already from the PREZODE, and I saw many other countries coming up, hopefully, and a series of university and research institute who have a lot of experience. So I think that now creating a space for the country and high-level institution expressing themselves is also a very nice way to mobilize their motivation and their own resource to implement the activity to prevent zoonotic risk. Because when I listen some of the talks this morning and colleagues from the workshop from Europe, the resources are there from the northern country, and we need to find a way how to strengthen the capacity of the global south so that we can implement and promote this approach together in a very efficient way. And I already touched a bit on the value of money. And I believe, and I have a lot of hopes to this on these platforms that we can convene more high-level institution, country, association, communities to really make One Health operationalized at the local level, because the importance to apply One Health is also very much at the community level. And Priska, because that I would agree with you very much on the first statement that the community is one of the key actors and the problem we need to solve from the zoonotic risk prevention level.
Mr. Susan, so how do you think PREZODE can help these implementation challenges?
Well, at least in Latin America and in some places where I have been working, before the pandemic, we were working on this idea of One Health, trying to monitor, but it was difficult to enhance collaborations. It was difficult to work with the health, with the policy makers. It was difficult to talk about One Health in general and integrate projects. After the pandemic, and with all collaboration that we have done internationally, and the PREZODE enhance completely the collaborations and now make the connections. And now policymakers are interested, people is interested, multidisciplinary approaches are now, intersectoral ways are interested in our projects. And our projects we're developing on research, on the field, working with people, became more attractive for everybody. So PREZODE is working and strong hubs for Mexico in a local way, for regional way, and also for an international impact. So I guess this is perfect to construct a way together to start working on this and sharing, which is what we need, is what I think.
Thank you. And Ms. Mugabe, what's your view on that?
Yes, in addition to all these very important factors that are pertinent in this process, I think also the issue of efficiency, the fact that we are coming together with a lot of expertise, with a lot of resourcefulness, not just financial resourcefulness, but in terms of experiences, in terms of solutions, it makes us all the more effective and efficient if we can come together in an initiative such as this, where I really liked what somebody said earlier, to say this is not just about a project where we are out after 3 years, we are out and nobody remembers what that was all about. If we can have continuity, if we can have sustainability, and I believe also if we can have accountability for those resources. My colleague was talking about the value of money, accountability. Even when you talk to communities, you know what? Their time is worth a lot to them. You don't go there and waste their time and then really nothing comes out of it. So I think this is an opportunity to do things in a very targeted, visionary way, purposeful way, with the target of having this zoonotic issues being tackled with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I can now only thank all three of you for your very valuable contributions. And it was indeed very interesting to hear how your co-construction processes went. So we're now going to close the loop of our world tour and go back north, because there were also co-construction workshops held in North America and Canada. And to report on those workshops, I'd like to invite Manon Lunas, who's a postdoctorate researcher and scientific project manager for PREZODE at IRD. Manon, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, thank you. Okay, so can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I am presenting today a short synthesis of the USA-Canada workshop we had a few months ago. And I would like just to mention that the analysis of the different contributions is still ongoing. So the global objective of this workshop was to identify synergies between North American projects or initiatives and PREZODE. Next slide, please. So we gathered 34 experts on zoonotic disease emergence from 33 universities and agencies, largely distributed in USA and Canada. And we structured the discussion around 2 sessions. So first, the identification of ongoing initiatives or projects on zoonotic disease emergence and their links with the 5 pillars of PREZODE. And so we discussed around 41 projects that are in the scope of the initiative. And then this work, this work is completing the ongoing work done on initiative mapping at a global scale, and will help to identify how we can avoid the duplication of effort and ensure a good complementarity. So we then linked the different projects with the 5 pillars of PREZODE, and finally we discussed how to structure that, what is missing in current synergies and collaboration, and how to engage and structure future collaborations between PREZODE and their projects. Next slide, please. So here I did a Venn diagram to represent the distribution of the presented projects on the different pillars of PREZODE. And so we can see that most of the projects were assigned to the pillar 1 on risk assessment, followed by pillar 3 on early detection systems, and pillar 5 on co-development of health networks and policies. Next slide, please. So interestingly, among all the projects that were presented, we had 4 programs that were assigned to the 5 pillars. So the CORI, the Collaborative One Health Research Initiative on Epidemics, that is launched by the Canada International Development Research Center. the USAID Stop Spillover, the USDA IRS Animal Health National Research Program, and the CDC's One Health Zoonotic Disease Prioritization process. Next slide, please. So during the session, to identify what is missing in current synergy or collaboration, the experts mentioned the need to have complex system approaches and the need to integrate ecological and social context under an adaptive management framework. They need to bring ecology as a center of the One Health approach and to have new approaches to promote change in paradigm and co-construction approaches. Then the data interoperability was a lot discussed. So the need to have data at a global scale that are harmonized and interoperable. Also, the need to have a platform to share knowledge, information, and to share the field effort. To share, for example, a protocol that are standardized, to share sample, and to have a central database for projects to identify possible collaborations. Then they mention the lack of shared capacity building program and the lack of capacity in ecology and in financing science. Of course, the lack of collaboration between and within sector was largely discussed, and they focus on the need to have researchers collaborating between each other, but also communicating with stakeholders and policymakers. And that makes the link with the last point that was discussed, that is the need to promote dialogue between science and policies and to facilitate the operationality of science in action. Next slide, please. So now, when we ask them to give ideas on how to engage and structure future collaboration between PREZODE and their project, they mentioned the fact that PREZODE could help to organize the research data and samples at global scale. Also, PREZODE could organize regular meetings with specific focus to exchange on technical questions, for example, modeling, to provide training opportunities for early career professionals, to help to have more interaction and meeting to build this partnership and relationship, also to push for international collaborative research funding. And finally, PREZODE could provide strategic tools to structure the conversation around the way to move forward and define a common vision. Next slide, and many thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much for reporting on that particular geographical area's results. I'd like to now give back the floor to Jean-François Susana, who's the Vice President for International Affairs at INRAE. Having heard all these testimonies of the initiatives, of the work, of the workshops that have been going on for a while now under the auspices of PREZODE, what's your feeling?
Thank you, Florence. So I think it's really striking to hear about those reports from the different world regions. What strikes me is that indeed they provide some very aligned messages. It seems that so far we have seen mostly highly specialized actions and research projects that have been largely working in silos and have been also with competition for funding. And we can hear that the key message is that now we need to have a much greater cooperative spirit and to connect the dots between ecological health, animal health, and human health. Indeed, this is a highly systemic activity that we can have that connects research, surveillance, operational activities. And this shift in mindset, in paradigm that we can bring with PREZODE is essential to avoid working in silos. And we heard this is really a long-term investment. It is much broader than any project. It is in fact broader than most of the programs. And by bringing a critical mass, it can create synergies, create capacity building, and possibly mobilize large funding streams. So I think it's also through the co-construction that this can be developed, because everyone needs to have a say, and we could see that this brings in really new dimensions. So now we have to connect this again to what's happening in Europe, because this is our Europe workshop. And I'd like to mention here some of the Green Deal strategies and some of the Horizon Europe partnerships because they are certainly relevant. And we can say that they are relevant for reaching the 5 interconnected targets of PREZODE that were presented earlier by Elisa and Gwenaëlle. So Green Deal strategies that could contribute are the farm to fork strategy, the biodiversity strategy, the forest strategy, because you understand they are all about this land sector. There are also strategies that can help slowing the footprint of Europe, like regulating by having deforestation-free products. And we can have also some other actions like on the antimicrobial responses that are relevant. But if you think about it, you will quickly realize that none of those strategies, regulations, and actions are in fact centered on the domain of PREZODE, which is preventing the zoonotic diseases. So I think there is scope for further work, there is scope for further integration across those strategies. And certainly this is not only at the European scale, but it is also in each of the member states. So we need to strengthen possibly some public policies, what about wildlife trade, and to harmonize the surveillance networks. When we now look into the research dimensions, Jean-Charles Cavit introduced the partnerships that can contribute. And just to remind you, Biodiversa Plus on biodiversity, the Animal Health and Welfare Partnership, the One Health and AMR Partnership are certainly relevant and can contribute to PREZODE. Well, we could also say the pandemic preparedness to some extent, but it's then preparedness, not really prevention. What is striking here is that we need that those partnerships from Horizon Europe work better together as soon as they are launched, that we have really a community of partnerships to address the central issue of PREZODE that here again is not really covered by each partnership. They can contribute, but they don't cover the central goal of prevention of zoonotic diseases. So I think we can see here we have, both in terms of the Green Deal strategies and of the Horizon Europe landscape, some degree of fragmentation that we need to overcome to reach the central goals of PREZODE. And in the next slide, I'd like to just address also the international cooperation dimension. So this has been introduced in already with the statement by Jan Peiler from DG INPA mentioning that there are 145 projects with cooperation involving One Health between Europe and Africa. So this seems a very large number, and possibly it implies that those projects are fairly fragmented, fairly specialized once more. So clearly the Team Europe One Health initiative is welcome, and I think it should be strongly connected with PREZODE as it covers the zoonoses and AMRs. It has important dimensions about health surveillance, lab networks, policy agendas. But what about covering other world regions with such Team Europe actions? Is it only for Africa? Could it be expanded to other world regions? And then what about cooperation that is starting from other world regions, like cooperation developed from North America or developed from Asia towards some of the developing countries? How could we help having at least exchanges of views and better understanding, better synergies across those cooperation actions? Now, in this landscape for international cooperation, it's fair to mention the NDICI, which is the large political agreement on neighboring cooperation that has a thematic program on advancing health security that could be also helpful. There is a STAR-RIDAS, International Research Consortium, which is more on specialized animal diseases, specific animal diseases, but now it comes with a more integrated perspective on One Health and coronavirus. So this could help. And just to mention EDCTP3, sorry for the acronym, which is more about clinical trials, and therefore I feel it's not really in the scope. Last but possibly not least, there is this food and nutrition strategic roadmap between the European Union and the African Union, where a One Health approach is also mentioned. So my feeling personally is that we need to do more, and that PREZODE is certainly very important to bring a sort of integrated framework for that international cooperation on preventing these zoonotic diseases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Susana. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to take a 10 minutes break. We will resume at 3:40 sharp, so 3:40, because we have a new series of very high level and interesting speakers as well. And we have to end on time to make sure that everybody meets their future commitments. So please be back in what is it? Exactly 9 minutes from now. See you in a few minutes.